Hi, I'm Brian Heidelberger, a partner with the law firm of Winston & Strawn in Chicago, and here today with another mini advertising law lesson. Today's law lesson is July 1st, and are you ready for the new COPPA rule which goes in effect today? Well, we'll find out by the end of this presentation. But first, I know you're looking at me. I look a little bit strange. I look a little bit tired. I am. It's late, so let's get this over with. All right, what is COPPA? It is a federal rule which prohibits the online collection of personally identifying information of children under the age of 13 without parental consent. So, it applies to information submitted by children under the age of 13, not information about children under the age of 13. And it requires you to get verifiable parental consent if you're going to do that. And that's not, hey kids, get your parents' permission before taking part. So, why do we care about this? Well, because there's significant penalties from the FTC, and in fact, one company 2 years ago was hit with a $3 million fine. In addition to that, we have a 20-year consent order which can be imposed, and I don't know about you, but I don't really want the FTC watching over me for the next 20 years. So let's get some definitions straight. First, we understand it applies to the online collection. What is online? And throughout this presentation, we're going to use the word platform because it includes websites, but it also includes apps. It includes networked video games, internet kiosks, video chat, audio chat, anything that is really connected to the internet. Now, it applies to the online collection. What are we talking about? Collection, and that's when information is being transferred from the child to us. So if kids are just interacting on our platform using their PII, but we're not actually collecting that, then it wouldn't apply. Also, if kids are uploading information to something like a kiosk, but it's not connected to the internet, COPPA wouldn't apply. So, online collection of personally identifiable information, what is that? Well, obviously, name, first and last name, address, telephone number, social security number, email address, but it also includes things like your Skype address or a screen name, if that screen name is usable across multiple sites. And again, let's remember, we're talking here about information that's collected from a child under 13, not information collected about a child under 13. Now, personally identifiable information also includes photos from kids under the age of 13, video, audio that includes the likeness or a voice of a child under the age of 13. Now, it also includes geolocation data, and we know via smartphones that that data is being collected often. Now, that is geolocation if it is sufficient to identify a street name and the name of a city or a town. It also applies to persistent identifiers, and these are things like cookies or IP address or your device serial number, those things that are used to recognize a user time over time and across platforms. Now, there is an exception here. You can collect a persistent identifiable if you're not collecting any other personally identifiable information, and you're only using that persistent identifier for internal operations of the platform. But be very careful, because using behavioral advertising or making a profile of the user or any other use other than strictly internal operations of the platform does not apply. So, we understand what online is, what collection is, what personally identifiable information is. So now, who does this apply to? Well, it applies to platforms directed to kids under the age of 13. It applies to general audience platforms when they know they're collecting information from children under the age of 13, as well as platform that actually gets information from another kid's platform. So if we're talking about the first one, about what is a platform directed to kids, there is no direct guideline, but there's a lot of things the FTC looks at. You're looking at the list here, but they look at the age of the people on it, the type of advertising on the site, and the type of advertising you do for the site. Are kid-friendly celebrities on the site? Are you using kid language? Are you using animated characters? And if you know about the audience makeup of your site, even if it doesn't include any of those things, if you know you're collecting information or kids are coming to your website under the age of 13, then that would be a platform likely directed to kids. Now, what about a teen platform that has kids and it also has kids over the age of 13? Well, even if children under the age of 13 aren't the primary audience, but you're still in part targeting them, well, then your site is going to be deemed to be directed to children. Now, what about if we have a site and we're not sure about it and we have an age gate? Well, once you identify that the user is a kid under the age of 13, you're going to have to either, one, get parental consent, or two, you're going to have to not collect the information and send kids onto a platform that doesn't require any kind of disclosure of personal information. But be careful, because now you know that a kid is under the age of 13. If you bounce them somewhere else, if you have persistent identifiers and you are using them for other than the internal operation of your site, you're going to have a problem. And also be careful, don't just knock kids completely out of your website, because if you're directing or you're targeting kids, even in part, you have to provide them the ability to use your site in other areas. You can't just completely kick them off your website. So, what if we aren't talking about kid-directed sites, but we are talking about general audience platform? Well, if you have actual knowledge that you're collecting, using, or disclosing personal information from children under 13, the rule applies to you. Now, that doesn't mean that when kids post personal information, but we don't actually know that they're under the age of 13, that it applies. It wouldn't in that instance. And it doesn't apply in situations where kids might post and announce their age, but it's not something that becomes aware to you. So, we generally know the rules about getting prior verifiable parental consent in certain instances. When don't we have to do that? Well, obviously, when we're attempting to get this parental consent, we can collect some information from children, such as the parents' online contact information. Now, sweepstakes and contests is something that a lot of people have interest in and do online. Now, you don't need parental consent if you're collecting only the online contact information to enter the child, and you're only notifying the child if they have won or lost, and if you delete that information right away. You do have to get parental consent if you're going to collect any other information from the children beyond their online contact information, such as their email address, or you're going to be contacting them for reasons other than the sweepstakes. Now, what does this do to online behavioral advertising as well as push messages that you see on your mobile handset? Well, if you have a kids platform, kid-directed, you knowingly collecting information from kids under 13, well, you're going to need parental consent. What about a mixed audience platform where you target both kids under the age of 13 as well as maybe teens or adults? Well, in that kind of case, to do online behavioral advertising, to shoot push messages to kids, you're going to need prior parental consent, or you're going to, before you collect this information, you're going to have to age gate it. So you only do the online behavioral advertising to people who are 13 and older. So that's it for today's mini law lesson. I know it's a lot of information, but you definitely want to do an audit to your site, whether you think it's directed to kids under the age of 13 or not, as soon as possible now that this July 1 deadline has hit. Don't forget, follow me on Twitter at Bry Heidelberger, and there are more mini law lessons available on youtube.com/adage or youtube.com/Brian Heidelberger. And of course, until next time, let's be careful out there.